Hi, everybody. This is Saad. Earlier today, I appeared on Brian Kilmeade's radio show hosted by Fox News. Uh, we discussed many things, one of which was Whoopi Goldberg's uh, latest incendiary comments about the Holocaust not being about racism, because after all, it's just a bunch of white people, meaning the German Aryans, fighting against a bunch of other white people called the Jews. So it's not racism. It's not racism. Don't call it racism. It's just whites killing whites. So, of course, the level of idiocy is simply profound. So, what I thought I would do is read for you two sets of passages, one regarding the Nuremberg race laws, and the other one in reference to the Nazi racial science. So, here we go. Let's begin first. And Ms. Goldberg, consider this some free education. So this is from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. I'll put the links to both of the places where I'm reading this from. On September 15th, 1935, the Nazi regime announced two new laws: the Reich Citizenship Law and the Law for the Protection of German Blood and German Honor. These laws informally became known as the Nuremberg Laws or Nuremberg Race Laws. This is because they were first announced at a Nazi Party rally held in the German city of Nuremberg. Why did the Nazis enact the Nuremberg Race Laws? Are you hearing the word race? Whoopi? Whoops. The Nazis enacted the Nuremberg Laws because they wanted to put their idea about race into law. They believed in the false theory that the world is divided into distinct races that are not equally strong and valuable. The Nazis considered Germans to be members of the supposedly superior Aryan race. They saw the so-called Aryan German race as the strongest and most valuable race of all. According to the Nazis, Jews were not Aryans. They thought Jews belonged to a separate race that was inferior to all other races. The Nazis believed that the presence of Jews in Germany threatened the German people. They believed they had to separate Jews from other Germans to protect and strengthen Germany. The Nuremberg Laws were an important step towards achieving this goal. So that's part one. And then when it comes to the Nazi racial science, also from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. I'll put the link to that. Introduction: from 1933 to 1945, Nazi Germany carried out a campaign to, quote, cleanse German society of individuals viewed as biological threats to the nation's health. Enlisting the help of physicians and medically trained geneticists, psychiatrists, and anthropologists, the Nazis developed racial health policies that began with the mass sterilization of, quote, genetically diseased, close quote, persons and ended with the near annihilation of European Jewry. With the patina of legitimacy provided by, quote, racial science experts, the Nazi regime carried out a program of approximately 400,000 forced sterilizations and over 275,000 euthanasia deaths that found its most radical manifestations in the death of millions of, quote, racial enemies in the Holocaust. So one could argue, so a couple of points to make here. One could argue that almost nothing that anyone from the left who's called for the canceling because someone said something, nothing could have come as more offensive than what Whoopi Goldberg said. Do I think that she should be canceled? No. Do I think she is a gargantuan imbecile that has about as much intelligence as my glasses? Yes. Do I think she should be fired? No. Do I accept her apology as Brian Kilmeade asked me, as a Jewish person? Yes, I accept her apology. In a free society, people are allowed to be morons like Whoopi Goldberg. Goldberg, interesting. Sounds like a Jewish name. They're allowed to spread falsehoods. They're allowed to be racists. That's what you get in a free society. So remember this. By any measure that the grotesque left has embodied in the current zeitgeist, Whoopi Goldberg should have been fired before she began her astonishing idiocy. The entire Holocaust was based on, the Aryan view of races. But so again, by that standard, she should be fired. I stand before you as a person with a brain who says that it's not a good idea to go after people because we disagree with them, because they say stupid stuff, because they say racist stuff, because they spread falsehoods. That's what freedom of speech is. So Whoopi, I think you're a moron. I think you are an imbecile, but I also think that you should not be losing your job. And I accept your apology. So that's number one. Number two is to ask, why is Whoopi so misinformed when it comes to this issue? And here I'm going to get psychological on you. As I have explained in this book, The Parasitic Mind, which you should all be going out to purchase and gift to everyone whose mind you wish to protect against parasitic ideas. As I explained in the book, I talk about Munchausen syndrome and Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Now, I first wrote about this set of psychiatric disorders in a 2010 paper in a medical journal, where I was trying to explain or offer an evolutionary explanation for Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Let me explain again what those two psychiatric conditions are. Munchausen syndrome is when someone feigns a medical illness so that they can garner empathy and sympathy. Munchausen syndrome by proxy is much more diabolical in that you take someone who is under your care, typically your biological child, your elderly parent, your pet, and you harm them willfully and diabolically so that you can garner the ego strokes, the empathy and the sympathy by proxy, right? Oh my God, you are a parent of an ailing child. Let me hug you. It's truly a catastrophically diabolical psychiatric condition. And in that paper, I was trying to explain an evolutionary lens for why, biological mothers would harm their children, such that protecting them is superseded by a desire to be empathized with. And so that's where I got the original idea to then argue that everything that we're seeing in society, whereby the top mechanism by which we ascend the social hierarchy is by having greater victimhood, and hence we have all of the faux victimhood whining, a la Jussie Smollett and Elizabeth Warren and the rest of them, is what I called collective Munchausen and collective Munchausen by proxy. Because there is a great twisted sense of wholeness that comes from me being the greatest victim. Now, of course, this is very damaging to people who are true victims because it really soils their actual accounts of victimhood when you are constructing faux accounts of victimhood. So now coming back to Whoopi, why was she doing this? She is able to revel all day long in, I am a black woman who is afraid to go out of my house. I am a black woman with a history of my people having been enslaved, and therefore I wish to be the queen of victimhood. Sure, those Jews over there, they suffered, whereby they were systematically eradicated at a industrial scale level like the world has never seen before. But that's not racism. Racism is restricted to skin you. I am black, you can overtly see my skin color. They are white, you could see their skin color. I have monopoly over racism. So even though there is a thing called Nazi racial science, and even though there is a thing called the Nuremberg race laws, I am smarter than history. I'm speaking as Whoopi. Therefore, I can go on The View, whereby all of the hosts of the show collectively don't have the intelligence of this mug. See the parasitic mind here? But they have no epistemic humility, therefore they espouse all sorts of insane things, and yet they suffer no consequences. But I support their right to not suffer any consequences, because I can then do a sad truth clip whereby I mock them, I ridicule them, I look at them with great derision and disdain. That's how it works in a free society. We debate each other. We let the velocity of information flow, and therefore we don't seek to cancel Joe Rogan. We let him have his show and speak to whomever he wants, and if we like what he says, we'll listen more. If we don't like what he says, we'll turn off and never listen to him again. It is astonishing that so few people, called academics, called university students, called members of the intelligentsia, fail to understand these most fundamental principles of a free society. So, to conclude, Whoopi, you don't have monopolistic ownership over victimhood. Racism is not restricted to your ancestors' reality. You don't get to urinate on all other stories of victimhood, tragic stories of victimhood, because you wish to claim ownership as the ultimate racial victim. What I faced growing up in Lebanon as a child on any given Tuesday is more hatred and bigotry than you faced in your miserable, lobotomized life. So I think you're an imbecile, but I support your right to be an imbecile. Take care, everybody.